Hey everyone, we're going to be talking about cell membrane structure and function today. If you just want to put the title on your notebook as cell membrane, that's totally fine. You can shorten it, but you will need your notebook. So if you don't have your notebook and your pencil, go ahead and pause the video and then grab that and come back when you are ready. So this is review, so you don't have to write it down because remember, we already have this in our notes, in the cell parts notes. The job of the cell membrane to control what goes in and out of the cell. It acts kind of like a gatekeeper, okay? It's like a doorway, right? The gate can open and close, and it allows certain things through. And what we're going to learn today, too, is that it doesn't let everything through. Right? We saw that in some of the labs that we've done. Not everything can go through the membrane because it's either too big or it's not the right shape. So we're going to learn more about that. All right, so go ahead and write this down. The cell membrane is made up of two things. So I'm going to tell you the first one. The first one is called phospholipids. You might be like, what the heck is a phospholipid? Well, we're going to talk about it. What words do you see in phospholipid? Does it sound like anything you've heard before? So phospho refers to phosphorus, right? You might have heard of phosphorus before. You don't have to know what it is, but it's found on the periodic table. And a lipid is another name for a fat, okay? So it's a fat that's got phosphate in it. Now, here's what it looks like. And you can just go ahead and draw. I drew like a stick figure. This is how I usually have kids draw it. But you need to know what a phospholipid looks like. You don't have to draw it super big, but it's a circle. And then it's got two tails, okay? And this is what makes up the cell membrane. Now remember, this is super, super tiny, okay? Cells are super, super tiny. So if this is a part that's inside the cell, it's going to be even smaller than a cell. Okay, so very, very tiny. Here's what a phospholipid actually looks like. So let me go back so we can see, right? The circle with the two tails. Okay, you kind of see it here. It's not really a circle, but do you see the two tails? What do you think the C's and the H's stand for, or the O's? So C is for carbon, right? These are atoms, okay? H is for, what do you think? Hydrogen. O is for oxygen. The P, that's our phosphorus, right? That's why it's called a phospholipid. So these are the two lipids that make up the tails. Now don't worry, you don't need to remember that these are C's and H's. You don't need to draw this, but I'm just showing you. Remember, atoms from the periodic table make up everything that's inside of a cell. So even though cells are super tiny, atoms like carbon and hydrogen are even tinier. So let's look at how these phospholipids line up. I'd like you to draw something similar to this left-hand drawing in your notebook. It doesn't have to be this detailed. Remember, just draw stick figures. So circle, two legs, circle, two legs, circle, two legs. And then on the bottom, circle, two legs. And it doesn't have to be this long, but this is how they line up to create the cell membrane. I'll give you a second to draw that. And notice on the right here, this is how they line up, right? Just like how you drew, but in the cell membrane to make a circle here, right? This is what the cell membrane is made of. Kind of crazy, huh? So notice it's got two sets of phospholipids, right? One layer on the top, one layer on the bottom, okay? So because it has two layers, the cell membrane is called a phospholipid bilayer. Bi means two. So two layers, right? Two layers of phospholipids. So you can go ahead and write this down if you haven't already. Remember, just go ahead and pause the video if you ever need extra time to write something down. So when we talk about the cell membrane doesn't let everything through. It's what we call selectively permeable. Okay, so it selects some things to go through. So permeable means things can go through. Okay, you may have heard like some rain jackets are impermeable to water, meaning they don't let water through. Permeable means they let water through. But it selects which molecules go through. So only some things can go through, other things can't. I want you to write this down as well. Remember when we've done all of our labs, we've shown that starch is a really big molecule. So starch maybe is like these blue molecules, and it's too big to go across the cell membrane. So this might be, a molecule that doesn't make it across the cell membrane. We know water is really, really small, so water can go across the cell membrane really easily. Remember we said it goes from high to low. On the right-hand picture, you'll see there's red and blue molecules. Who knows what molecules they are? It doesn't really matter. But notice only the red ones are able to get through the cell membrane. Okay, so the cell membrane only lets some things through. Remember, it's like that gatekeeper. It controls the gate to let things in or out. All right, so we said the cell membrane is made up of two things. I told you phospholipids. Now I need you to write number 2. Number 2 is proteins, okay? Take a look at this purple thing. This is a protein. What's it doing? It's making a channel for big molecules or molecules to get through the cell membrane. So go ahead and write that down, number 2. You already have number 1 written. So if we look at this protein, remember we said only certain things can go in and out of the membrane? Well, sometimes these molecules need a little more help, right? Maybe they're big molecules, maybe they can't really squeeze through the cell membrane. So we make little channels for them that guide them through to the other side of the cell membrane. Remember, the cell membrane in the cell, we need to get nutrients in, we got to get waste out, okay? So stuff has to be able to go through the cell membrane. And if it's too big, we need little channels, little passageways. So what I want to show you here in this little video is a picture of the cell membrane. And these are all channels. You'll notice there are molecules, and those molecules are able to fit into the correct channel. So each channel is for a different molecule. This channel is for these red hexagon molecules. We're going to see in a second there's going to be some more molecules that pop up. This channel over here is for the pink circles. And notice, look at this green triangle. He just tried to get into this channel, and he couldn't, because this channel is only for the hexagons. So we say that these channels are specific, meaning they have a specific size and shape of a molecule that fits in there. They're made for one type of molecule. They're not made for all different types of molecules. So let's go ahead and write this down. Molecules have to be the correct size and shape in order to fit through that channel. You'll see down here we've got a triangle-shaped molecule binding to this triangle-shaped opening in this channel. Circular molecule binding to the opening here in this channel. They have to be the right size and shape. And this is why we say proteins are specific. They only allow certain ones to come through. So we talked about how proteins make channels, right? Proteins make channels, we wrote that down. They also make receptors. So here's an example of a receptor. It kind of looks like a hand here, and it's grabbing onto this molecule. Receptors are on the outside of the cell. And on the outside of the cell, they grab onto molecules or molecules bind to them, and then they allow things to happen inside of the cell. So in this example, this purple molecule is going to bind to this receptor here, and then it's going to cause some other stuff to happen inside the cell. It triggers an event. It's kind of like a domino effect. Here we have this blue circle that just bound, to this channel, okay, and it's causing a whole chain reaction. So take a look, it binds here, and this molecule comes, and this molecule goes over here, and this one goes over here, and then it opens the channel. We don't really care about all the stuff that happens in here. This is just one example, but it's showing you that it causes certain things to happen inside the cell. And what it causes to happen inside the cell is different depending on what type of receptor it is, or what type of molecule is binding. So go ahead and write this down. Proteins also act as receptors on the outside of the cell membrane. And just like how we said the channels are specific, meaning we need the right size and shape of molecule, receptors are specific too. We need the right size and shape of molecule to bind. If you need more time to write, go ahead and pause the video. So I want to show you a real world example. So COVID-19, the virus that causes COVID-19 binds to a receptor on a human cell. And once it binds to this receptor, it tells the cell, hey, we gotta let this molecule in. So the cell lets the virus in. And that's how this virus gets inside of your cells and infects your cells. We've also talked about diabetes. This diagram looks kind of scary, but we're just gonna focus on one little part of it. Here's a receptor for insulin. Insulin comes in, binds to the receptor, and what it ends up causing is this glucose channel to open so that sugar can get into the cell. So the receptor causes the channel to open, and that's how sugar gets into your cell. So those are two different examples of why receptors are so important.